Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. All right, so let's talk now about the Ring of Gyges. I think this is an example that's very easy for students to relate to, and it's good to think about. There's a lot of questions sort of rolled into it that we often don't approach. And I want you to sort of think about your own answers to these sorts of things. So let's start, what is the Ring of Gyges first off? You got this guy, Gyges, he's a shepherd. There's actually a different story told about him in Herodotus, where the king actually brings him in to look at his wife naked, and then the wife finds out and says, "You got to kill the king." This ring thing is something Plato made up. The Herodotus story, Gyges does in fact kill the king and marry the queen, but it's a slightly different story. In this one, he's a shepherd. He finds this crevice, and there's a ring in it. So he puts the ring on, and guess what? Turns him invisible. And what's that? Yeah, so it's kind of a fairy tale kind of thing, right? So what does he do? First thing he does, kills the king, marries the queen. Now he's in charge, and he can do anything that he likes. And why is Glaucon bringing up this story? What's really essential to it? Well, remember, we're talking about justice and injustice. Was it right for Gyges? In the old Gyges story, you could maybe say, yeah, he was coerced. Maybe it was the right thing for him to do to kill the king. Let me actually tell you this. So it's kind of a weird story in the old story, right? The Herodotus story. The king is friends with Gyges, and he says, "I want you to see my wife naked. I don't want her to know that you're seeing her. This is kind of like a trick I'm going to play on her. So you're going to hide behind, I think it was the door or something, and just kind of look in, because she's really, really pretty." And it's sort of like guys in the locker room talking about, their girlfriends or something like that. Sometimes you hear this stuff and you're like, man, I don't know why you would say that. So this is that sort of thing. And guy just does it. He comes in, and I forget exactly what happens, but somehow she figures out that he's there. And so she says, this is not going to work. Okay, we're going to change things now. You're either going to kill the king, or I'm going to have you killed. So you got to make a decision. So in that case, Gyges, killing a king, that's a bad thing. Right? Killing anybody, it's a bad thing. But you can understand, he was placed in this situation where it's kill or be killed, and you can maybe feel a bit more sympathy for him. Not so with Plato's character, right? He just puts on the ring, says, I'd kind of like to be king. I'll kill this guy. I'll take his wife. Now everything's great for me. He's an unjust guy, isn't he? He doesn't have any sort of, I was under duress kind of reason for what he does. He's doing bad things. So what's essential to the story? The ring is somehow connected with injustice because it does what? What's that?
Tempts.
Yeah, that's a key thing. So the ring, it tempts. How does it tempt, though? I mean, it's not like it talks to you and says, hey, go kill the king. Yeah.
Takes away the consequences of doing
Yeah. Takes away consequences. For you, not for everybody else, right? Consequences are pretty bad for Gyges' king. Maybe the queen likes, change of husband. I don't know in this story. Presumably it's not a good thing. What else? Is there anything else that's really essential to this? So it tempts a person in a certain way, what you might say, of the person, right? It takes away the consequences. What else does it do? It gives you power. This represents power in a very raw, unadulterated form. That's why it's sort of the fairy tale thing, because real power is never like that. As you guys get older and you start making your way up the ladder, you'll be saying to yourself, man, I can't wait until I get to be the boss. Then I'm not going to have somebody else over me telling me what to do, and things will be so much easier for me. And then you realize when you're actually in charge, exercising power is not quite as simple as you think it is. There's all sorts of headaches that come with it. But in this story, there isn't, right? I mean, if somebody was a pain, you could kill them. Nobody would know. And forget about things like maybe you could throw dust on the guy and catch him the way they do the Invisible Man or things like that. Just go with the story. So you've got this sort of raw power. Now, think about this. We don't have rings of invisibility. Is there anything like that in our culture that, at least for some portion of time, or in certain circumstances, gives people something like that kind of power in our culture? Yeah.
Money.
Yeah, money can buy you immunity from things. You can use money to corrupt the political process, the judicial process. You can pay people off. So great wealth could do that. Yeah.
I was going to say any resource that most people don't have. So it's just about money is one of them. And then I guess if you have influence, so if you're like high up or position of power, you could like put your influence on other people.
Political power can do it. In certain respects, maybe celebrity could do it. Although if you're a celebrity, the trouble is you're not invisible, right?
But you would have like followers behind you, like people who believe the same as you.
Yeah, or even if they don't believe it, they're part of your entourage, so they'll tell a consistent story. I mean, there's some celebrities who can't go places because they've done bad things, and like if R. Kelly ever goes back to Chicago, he's in trouble. Or if Polanski comes back to the States, he's in trouble. In those cases, it failed, but there's a lot of things that people who have, how did you put it? It's more general. Money could be an example, power, influence.
Resources.
Resources, very good, yeah. What were you going to say?
Underground connections.
Yeah. Why do we find killing of a witness such a reprehensible thing compared to just killing somebody in general? Because it so corrupts the process. You got a bad person, say a contract killer. They kill somebody else. They finally get caught, and now there's witnesses to that, and the police are bringing a case, and then suddenly the witnesses start dying off. That person can't really be touched, can they? They've gotten away with it. Is there anything else? Think in terms of technology now. These are all resources. Those are all good. What about the internet gives people something kind of like that? Yeah. False identity, or sometimes no identity at all, anonymity. Any of you read comments, like on YouTube videos or blogs or stuff like that? Sometimes the comments, are intelligent debate going back and forth. How often does that happen? If you had to estimate a percentage. 1%. I'd say you're probably about right. And that's probably because you're on, fairly cerebral sites, If you're just like on what, the ordinary person is on, maybe even less than 1%. What are a lot of the comments?
Just it's either praise or it's either like, I'm just being vulgar about it, just like in the video. So.
Yeah, and people say horrible things, And then they say horrible things to each other, and about their families, and all sorts of things. They call each other Nazis quite often. We call that flaming, right? And there's a theory that one of the reasons, yeah, go ahead.
It actually gives you the power to say what you actually mean without the physical in front of you sort of face-to-face situation. You don't have to worry about it because you're never going to see the person, so you can say exactly what you mean.
Exactly. There's this notion that there's a kind of like cloak of invisibility given to the person on the internet who can then indulge whatever their desires are. Yeah.
Yeah, she basically covered it. She said like anonymity is
Yeah. Let's see, there's flaming and then there's trolling, right? What's trolling? So you deliberately go onto somebody's site and you say something inflammatory to try to get a rise out of them, and then you say something even more inflammatory. Why do people do this? Well, in part because they can get away with it. Because nobody's going to call them on it. I mean, you can kick somebody out of your site, but they can just come back in under another name, right? Think about this, though, and we're going to move on to the other questions. But think about this. What else is like that in our own culture? Other things where somebody is afforded anonymity or being freed of consequences, the same rules don't apply to them as apply to other people. Now, what would you do with a ring like that? Yeah.
Just rob banks.
Would you?
I agree.
I just say like on the low, just rob banks.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we act, when I give this as a sign to people, are often like, I would fight crime, you know, or I would only do good things. I would like maybe take gumballs, but I wouldn't take candy bars because that's like a big thing there, you know. And yeah, most of us, you know, if you actually gave us a ring like this, think about all the fantasies, desires that we have, all the things that we want. It would be kind of tough not to just go into any store and take what you wanted. Think about the people you don't like. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to walk up to them and like trip them, you know, or punch them in the nose? They don't even see it coming. Or, you know, we talked about this before, like, you know, in business settings, set up your competitors so that, you know, their report is going to, you know, they're going to get up in front of the boss at the big meeting and all their stuff is going to be screwed up. And they're not going to know what to do. And think about all the things that we'd be tempted to do. I know I'm not a particularly good person, so I would probably do a lot of bad things. You know. Now, what would keep? Are there any things you wouldn't do? Are there any lines you wouldn't cross? Or would all of you, you know, just start killing people, settling scores, stealing everything under the sun? Yeah.
Probably no murder.
Okay, that's good.
You don't need to murder someone for your own good. You know, like.
So not because murder's bad or anything.
No, it's just, well, I guess you could without consequence, but I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I've been.
Steal money from people that have it, or you know, do
So you'd be selective.
yeah,
I know I've been angry enough in my life that if I had a ring like that, I would kill people. And that's a bad thing. That's the case. I think some of us probably would be able to keep from murdering people. One of the dangers in that is rape. You know, maybe that would be something that we'd take off the table. You know, anything else that you know? So we'd all steal things. So we're not going to put that up there. Is there anything else you wouldn't do if you had a ring like that?
I'm going to keep
That about covers it? Okay, that's good. All right, now think about this. You've got a ring like that. What within you would keep you from murdering people? You gave one account. Well, you wouldn't need to. Well, let's say somebody really ticked you off, and when you got the ring off, and you're just like kept on you, and you're like, man, this person's just not going to let put the ring on it. Yeah, what were you going to say?
People know you got the ring or not?
No, nobody knows you've got the ring.
Oh, right.
That's what gives you the power. Yeah.
Murder is just a process. Like if you kill someone, then you gotta get rid of the body. But it's so much easier to walk into a bank, stuff in your pockets, and walk out. So murder is just like, I would be too lazy to kill anyone.
Yeah. Now, in Plato's time, of course, you know, they didn't have DNA and all that sort of stuff. So imagine that somehow this ring would also like automatically script DNA evidence or something like that. You know, so it's a get out of murder free card. Yeah.
I'd have to look at like his background, like how many loved ones he had. Because if he has like a family or like someone that like depends on him or her, I couldn't take their life.
You know, in some cases, that might actually make you more liable to do it. You'd be like, man, this person is just like a thug and a bully, and their family would be better off without that person in the picture. You can justify it.
If that's the case, then maybe murder is maybe a good decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the question around what would keep you from it?
Yeah.
Well, just in the case that if my mother found the ring, and like I'm not a good liar, so she'll be like, "What are you doing with that?" And if I tell her other things, then I'm gonna get beat.
Well, that's an interesting, I've never heard anyone bring up that sort of idea with it, but imagine you've got like an internalized mother worrying about what somebody would, if they knew that you had the ring and you're doing those things, would that be enough to actually keep you from doing some things at least? Yeah.
But if you just like, actually murdering someone is pretty hard to do. You could say like, oh yeah, do it, but to actually do it, like your conscience is going to stop you before you do it, no matter how you
Well, some people. I mean, a lot of people do murder.
or you should.
Yeah.
It's really pull the trigger.
Yeah, well, it's easy to do people in lots of ways. The human body is very fragile. Oh yeah, so your moral. So this is what the Ring of Gyges gets at, is there anything that would actually hold you back from doing something? Is there any sort of moral core, moral compass that would say, yeah, you can do this, but not this? Or would the ring itself end up being so corrupting? We'll come back to that question in a moment, because what would you be afraid other people would do? I mean, not everybody has that, right? You know some people, I think, who you would definitely not want to give a Ring of Gyges to, don't you? You guys know I used to teach in the maximum security prison. And there are guys who I actually worked with and got to know really well, who I would be fine with giving a Ring of Gyges to, who I knew from being in prison. There are other guys in the prison who I don't even want to see ever get out of that prison. Just no Ring of Gyges at all. I never want to see them out. The other guys living with them don't ever want to see them get out of prison. So there are some real, evil people out there. And just imagine the things that they could do with that sort of power. Now, there's a gap, right? You're not that person. But you put that ring on often enough. Would there be kind of a process that would lead you into becoming that person? This actually starts looking a lot like a different ring, doesn't it? A different fantasy ring. Anyone see any connections? The Lord of the Rings has the One Ring, right? And what does that One Ring do? Grants you incredible power. Not only does it turn you invisible, it lets you do all sorts of other stuff. What else does it do?
Causes you problems, even if you had no intention of doing anything bad with it, other people are going to come after you and cause you harm because they want what you have.
Yeah, they want it because they want that superpower. The guy who made it, is after it.
And kind of like it made Frodo kind of go nuts, like at points. Like he would just start losing it.
What did he lose it over? What was he trying to protect? What did he think Sam, because he got angry at Sam, right? What did he think Sam was trying to do? Take the ring, right. If you've got that sort of power makes you desire to hold on to that sort of power and use that sort of power as well. The Ring of Gyges is supposed to tell us something about egoism. It's supposed to tell us that if we actually had this sort of power, none of us could really be trusted, unless there's something in us. You call it having morals, or sometimes we talk about a conscience. You brought up conscience. Some sort of core to us that would actually say, no, you can't go, you can't do this. This is wrong. Now, if your understanding of justice is something purely instrumental, it's only good for getting other things, that's not going to hold you back, is it? This thing about worrying about what somebody else might say, that might actually be on the right track. Thinking about how you would appear to others. I know that could work for me. How you appear to yourself. Would you, after months and months, think about it. Some people, when I ask them about this, they think about it and they're like, yeah, first I would just steal gumballs, but then I'd probably start stealing other stuff, and then I'd start stealing other stuff, and then maybe start killing people, or doing other things that are bad. Because I know the kind of person that I am. When somebody lets me get away with something, I tend to want to get away with more and more and more. Is that a common human thing? I don't know. That's a problem for me. I've So the question that you'd have to think about then is what could actually keep you from doing that? You know, with the One Ring, really nobody can be trusted with it. So what's the whole, you know, book series about? Destroying the ring. Getting rid of that kind of power. Because not even, you notice there's some, how many of you have read The Lord of the Rings, or at least watched the movies? So I'll leave you with this thought. There are some really key points in that series where certain people are tempted to take the ring and don't do it. And they are people who are very wise. I can think of at least two. There's Gandalf, and Gandalf hesitates, doesn't he? And then he thinks about, man, if I had this ring, I could do so many good things, but that sort of thing is not going to actually keep going on like that. It's going to corrupt. And then there's, I forget her name, there's some elf lady. I should know this, but I'm not, you know, a big Tolkien scholar. And she is tempted with taking the ring, isn't she? At least in the movie. I'm not sure if that's in the book. She doesn't. Why not? Because she recognizes, she has enough wisdom to recognize, this would corrupt me. I'm not a good enough person. I'm a good enough person to recognize that I'm not a good enough person to withstand that kind of temptation. Yeah?
Doesn't he give the ring to the hobbits because he thinks like the hobbits' idea is like of innocence? So like when a hobbit is carrying the ring, he really stands no threat.
I suppose. I mean, the hobbits, you know, what are they really about? Eating, drinking, hanging out, you know.
Yeah.
They're not about like world power, domination, you know. Yeah.
Weren't the hobbits a representation of children? So they're so small. There's other humans, but they're bigger.
I don't know. That could be. I don't know much about Tolkien's like ideas for starting it. Some of you may know a lot more about that than I do. Yeah, it's. I think there is something to what you're saying about the hobbits being, in some sense, more innocent. But you notice that Frodo is like willing to kill Sam just to protect the ring. And Gollum is something sort of like a hobbit originally, and then look at what he turns into after years and years of being subjected to that ring. Not quite exactly the same thing as the Ring of Gyges, but the Ring of Gyges we have is similarly corrupting effect. So well worth thinking about.